Hello, my name is Jeff Baietto, and I'm the COO and Co-founder of Injoy Global. We've created an online gamified reinforcement platform that helps you create or reinforce any cultural change that you'd like in your organization. But more on that later. In our time together today, I'd like to talk to you about your corporate culture and it being the key to attracting, retaining, and engaging your talent. So in order to do that, I'd like to talk about three things. And the first thing is why now more than ever, you and your teams are uniquely positioned to make a massive impact in your organization's growth and overall success. Second, I'd like to look at the definition of culture and see if we can't put a more exact definition on what it is and specifically on what a positive culture includes. And third, I'd like to take a look at the biggest challenge that you face when it comes to traditional training and creating sustainable change in your organization. Okay, so let's take a look at the role you and your teams play in today's corporate landscape. And in order to do that, I'd like to ask you to do an exercise with me. If you did read the description of this talk, you would have seen that I've been asking you to think about your answer to a certain question. And the question is this: why do you do what you do? What is your why when it comes to being in the human resource, human capital, talent management, or employee learning arena? So here's the exercise. Take a moment to clarify your why, and then turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself, and simply say, my deepest reason for why I do what I do is. Okay, and the person who's listening, please listen, and then respond with, that's awesome, okay? And then switch so everyone gets a chance to share. Okay, great. You know, one of the things after hearing your answers is we've had a chance to talk to thousands of people in our arena. And while the exact wording changes, the themes are always consistent. You at your core love to help people grow and develop. You appreciate the challenge of wanting to bring out the best in people. And most of all, you know that people really are at the very core of an organization's long-term success. And the secret's out. Last year, Forbes ran an article that shared that 50% of CEOs currently rate culture, employee engagement, and talent retention as urgent issues. And why? Well, we all know the research. It's been shown time and time again that these three things impact every business outcome: productivity, sales, customer service, etc. And who do you think they're going to be turning to usher in this new culture or to help shape or change the culture that you currently have? You. That's why now more than ever, human capital, human resource, talent management, and the employee learning professionals sit at the very center of today's corporate culture revolution. Now more than ever, you guys really do have a chance to make a massive impact in your organization's growth and success. But while the potential for that is in front of you is exciting, there are a couple challenges that you are either already facing or that you're going to face. And these can feel very daunting. So I'd like to take a look at two of those today. The first one is actually defining culture, and then defining exactly what it is involved in creating a positive culture, because that's where we want to go. But first, let's look at the general definition of culture. If you Google corporate culture, this will be one of the definitions that comes up first. This first sentence of the quote of the definition is okay, but what I want to draw your attention to is the second sentence. It says, often, corporate culture is implied, not expressly defined, and it develops organically over time from the cumulative traits of the people that the organization hires. Now, culture has been identified as one of the foundational keys to every urgent issue that we face as in business today, and yet by its very definition, it is not expressly defined. Now, no other aspect of our business works this way. Sales, product development, IT, customer service, they are all expressly defined. And they are not allowed to develop organically over time, but rather they are developed systematically and consistently over time. So the first challenge that we have is really getting on the same page as to what it takes to create a positive culture. What culture is and what it takes to create a positive one. So there's a lot of opinions on this, but based on millions of employee engagement surveys, thousands of Glassdoor reviews, hundreds of business journal articles, dozens of academic research papers, and over 5 years of our own client experience, we boiled it down to 4 things. Now, if you take one thing away from our time together today, let it be this. Your success, your employee engagement, and the success of your overall culture will be in direct proportion to how well you deliver on the following 4 things. First, employees need to feel valued. They need to feel valued. This is the single greatest complaint year after year in employee engagement surveys. And it's either that they don't feel valued from their direct supervisor or from the company overall. And previous generations were more willing to stay at a job regardless of how they felt. But the millennials value just as much how work feels as they do the work itself, making them much more likely to leave sooner if they don't feel valued. Number 2, employees need to feel connected to others in the organization. Now, it is very easy and very common that employees end up feeling siloed based on function, team, location, etc. And this can easily lead to a feeling of separation instead of unity or connection. And why does this happen? It's pretty easy to understand. The truth is, we're all very busy, and time is a rarer and rarer commodity. And so even with the best of intentions to connect to others, we often find ourselves with only enough time to connect with those who we're working directly with or who have the resources that we specifically need. Number 3, employees need to feel that they're making a difference, that they're contributing to the company as a whole. And this is another very common complaint that employees have, is they're not making the connection between their role and the overall goals and mission of the organization. This comes back often in low marks in transparency or communication, but the reality, the foundation of this is that employees don't feel that they're making a difference in the larger scheme of things. And 4th, employees need to feel that they're growing, both personally and professionally. Growth is a psychological need. We all want to be challenged. We all want to learn new things. We want to solve new problems. And most importantly, from time to time, we want to look back and see that we're progressing as both a person and as a professional. So while these needs are universal, they have never been more front and center than with the millennials. And with the millennials being the largest percentage of our workforce, companies that can deliver on these 4 things are going to reap massive rewards when it comes to employee engagement, retention, innovation, and overall productivity. So I know what you're thinking. That sounds great, but how exactly do we do that? Is that what you were thinking? I hope that's what someone was thinking, because if you weren't thinking that, let's think about that for just a moment. Is the question how to create that? Well, actually, there are a lot of trainings on any of those 4 things already out there, and a lot of that training is really good. And if we just had a few minutes, we could easily brainstorm and come up with a lot of very viable ways to bring these concepts to life in your organizations. The challenge isn't as much how to create a positive culture as it is how to sustain it. How to sustain it. And in October of 2016, Harvard Business Review ran a cover article entitled, "Why Leadership Training in Corporate America Fails and What You Can Do About It." And in that article, they shared that in 2015, US companies spent over $160 billion on training. And when surveyed, those companies reported that they felt very underwhelmed by the long-term ROI from that investment. And why? Well, let's see if we can paint the picture. Employees go to trainings. Often the employee is very engaged, appreciates the training, takes lots of notes, makes a commitment to themselves to implement a couple of the nuggets or the habits or suggestions that the presenter makes. And yet 2 to 3 weeks later, most of the time, the great majority of employees report that they find themselves falling right back into the old way of doing things. And if they're really being honest, they often even struggle to remember exactly what the learning was. Has that ever happened to anybody? Let's be honest, it's happened to all of us. It's happened to all of us. And so, in fact, let's just do a little experiment. How many of you can actually name all 4 of the key ingredients to creating a positive culture that I just talked about just a couple minutes ago? Not bad, not bad. Give it 10 minutes. Give it 10 minutes. Give it 2 days. Statistically, only 3 of you will be able to name all 4 within the next 30 days, unless you have a chance to reinforce it. That study from Harvard Business Review reported that the biggest complaint companies had is they didn't have a way to reinforce the learnings after the training was done. So unless you have a way to reinforce the training or the learning or the new things that you want your organization to do, there's not going to be any change. And if you don't have a way to reinforce the new behaviors, the new actions long enough that they actually become habits, you won't have a chance at creating long-term sustainable change. Your problem is not one of how to create a positive culture, but rather how to sustain it. The biggest challenge you face is one of reinforcement. And that's the challenge that we at Injoy Global have dedicated ourselves to trying to solve. Thank you.